This man is the worst hitman in Irish history. Glen Clarke, in his short criminal career, claimed the lives of 3 innocent men, murders he carried out in error, and then accidentally shot himself in the head on his way to carry out his 4th hit. Glen Clarke grew up in a neighborhood in North Dublin. By his early 20s, he had become immersed in the city's gangland scene and was operating as a hired gun in underworld disputes. Clarke's name first surfaced in connection with a 2013 gang murder. He was linked to a West Dublin gang feud involving James Walsh, a notorious criminal. Clarke also offered his services to the Kinahan Cartel, one of Ireland's most powerful crime syndicates, as the Hutch-Kinahan gang war erupted after a Kinahan operative murdered Gary Hutch in 2015, and escalated when Hutch gunmen retaliated with the infamous Regency Hotel attack in February 2016, killing Kinahan associate David Byrne. In response, the Kinahan cartel launched an onslaught against anyone connected to the Hutch family. Clarke became one of the cartel's contract hitmen during this period, tasked with assassinating Hutch associates in revenge. Clarke proved to be an inept assassin. Media later dubbed him the Kinahan's incompetent hitman after multiple hit jobs went wrong. Clarke's first alleged killing took place in the early hours of August 24, 2013, in West Dublin. Dean Johnson, a 21-year-old with no criminal ties, was walking home after a night out when he was ambushed by 2 gunmen and shot dead. The attack was a case of mistaken identity from the start. Dean was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time and wearing the wrong jacket. Hours earlier, Dean had unknowingly crossed paths with a marked man, James Walsh, a gangland figure embroiled in a feud. In a twist of fate, Dean had swapped coats with Walsh at a local pub that night. Not long after, as Dean walked home in Walsh's jacket, assassins approached, wrongly believing Dean Johnson was Nellie Walsh. They opened fire, hitting Dean multiple times and fatally wounding him. Authorities eventually identified Glen as one of Dean's killers. Fast forward to April 14, 2016. Clarke struck again and once more claimed the life of an unintended victim. Martin O'Rourke, a 24-year-old Dublin man, was gunned down in broad daylight in the north inner city as he stepped out for lunch. Martin had no involvement in crime. He was a young father who had experienced homelessness and was striving to get his life on track. Yet he became another statistic in the feud, mistaken for someone else and shot in the head on a busy street. A lone gunman on a bicycle cruised up around noontime and opened fire on Martin at close range, hitting him in the head before fleeing. Panicked bystanders scattered as Martin collapsed on the pavement, fatally wounded. The murderer disappeared, dumping a handgun nearby and evading capture in the immediate aftermath. Investigators quickly determined this was another case of mistaken identity linked to the Hutch-Kinahan feud, and authorities believed Glen Clarke was the shooter who killed Martin O'Rourke. The third and most high-profile killing tied to Glen Clarke occurred abroad. On August 17, 2016, Trevor O'Neill, a 41-year-old Dublin City Council worker, was on holiday with his family in Costa de la Calma, Mallorca. Trevor was shot dead in front of his wife and children while walking back from a supermarket around 9 p.m. Spanish police quickly confirmed it was a gangland assassination gone wrong. Trevor was mistaken for a Hutch family member and slain by a Kinahan hitman. Moments before the murder, Trevor O'Neill had encountered a friend from Dublin, Jonathan Hutch, a relative of Gerry Hutch, and paused to chat with him on the street. That innocent conversation proved fatal. A hired gun tracking Jonathan Hutch spotted the 2 men and misidentified Trevor as Jonathan. The assassin crept up and fired 4 to 5 shots into Trevor's back at close range, in full view of holidaymakers and his family. Trevor O'Neill later died at a local hospital. Spanish and Irish authorities soon linked Glen Clarke to this crime, placing him in Majorca at the time of O'Neill's murder. By early 2018, Irish police openly named Clarke as the chief suspect in Trevor O'Neill's killing. Clarke's role as the gunman, if confirmed, made him a serial killer for the cartel, albeit a disastrously misguided one. By late 2016, Glen Clarke was wanted by police and likely marked by his own criminal employers for these botched jobs. On the night of December 2nd, 2016, just a few months after Trevor O'Neill's slaying, Glen Clarke met his end under puzzling circumstances. In the early hours, around 1:30 a.m., authorities on patrol discovered Clarke slumped and unconscious in a stolen Ford. The car had fake number plates and its engine was still running when he was found. Clarke had suffered a gunshot wound straight through his right eye, critically injuring him. A 9mm handgun lay in the vehicle. Clarke was rushed to the hospital but died from his wound the next day. Right away, there was intense speculation about how Glen Clarke was shot. In gangland law, it's not unheard of for a cartel to take care of an assassin who failed assignments. Given Clarke's trail of mistakes, one theory was that the Kinahan gang had executed him as punishment or to prevent further errors. However, evidence of another shooter was lacking. Clarke was found alone, and no witnesses reported an attacker at the scene. Another theory emerged. Clarke may have accidentally shot himself in the head. Investigators noted signs consistent with a self-inflicted discharge. Possibly Clarke was handling the loaded pistol and looked down the barrel or mishandled it, causing it to fire. The bullet's trajectory through his eye suggested a close-range accident rather than an execution-style shot. In fact, it became a popular belief in the media that this bungling hitman literally fell victim to his own bungling, killing himself by mistake while preparing for another hit. Police believed Clarke was on his way that night to carry out an assassination for the Kinahans. He was dressed in a boiler suit and driving a stolen, plate-swapped vehicle, hallmarks of a hit in progress. One investigative avenue held that Clarke was en route to murder Noel "Duck Egg" Kirwan, a close Hutch associate who lived just a short drive away. Kirwan was assassinated by the cartel 3 weeks later. The truth of that night remains murky. Clarke's family strongly disputed the idea that he shot himself, implying that foul play was involved and that he might have been murdered. Intriguingly, the bullet that killed Clarke was never found. Some believe it may have exited through an open window into the night, while others suggest a more sinister possibility, that someone deliberately removed it. Without the bullet, investigators were unable to determine the exact angle of fire, leaving crucial questions unanswered. In 2020, a coroner's inquest into Clarke's death returned an open verdict, citing insufficient evidence to determine whether his death was an accident or a homicide, leaving the case officially unsolved.